Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here. I'm thrilled to moderate this panel. We have some really fantastic guests. I'm very honored and very thrilled to have such guests here with me. We're still waiting for Ellen, so I'm going to introduce her last. On the very right, it's my honor to introduce Katya Hermes. She's Director of Music Cities at Sound Diplomacy. She founded the Sound Diplomacy office in Berlin. Katya has consulted several cities, and I think she's going to talk about that later, in terms of music city strategies. She gave lectures about music cities at events all over the world, and initiated the Music Cities Network with the Hamburg Music Business Association. She consulted with the United Nations, Industrial Development Organizations, GIZ, the Adam Mickiewicz, I don't know if I pronounce it properly, in Poland, Nordic embassies, and so many others. She has great experience in the music industry as well, having worked for Mutec, Ableton, as well as Initiative Musik. And she also holds a degree in geography and economy with a focus on urban planning and creative industries. Katya, it's a pleasure to have you here today. Sitting right next to me is Michela Magas. She's an innovation catalyst who bridges the worlds of science, art, design, technology, and academic research. So very much interdisciplinary, trying to connect the different worlds in her work, and has more than 20 years experience doing that. She's an advisor on innovation and artificial intelligence to the European Commission, as well as the G7 leaders. In 2017, she was awarded European Woman Innovator by the European Union, and in 2016, she was presented with an Innovation Luminary Award for Creative Innovation. Michela has a background in design and has worked with companies like Apple, Nike, Nokia, to just mention a few. The list goes on. And she founded, I believe, in 2012, Music Tech Fest, where she brings together innovators from across industries, media, artists, performers, developers, etc. And as part of Music Tech, she also directs Music Bricks that placed exclusive tools into the hands of creative developers and makers, and has them taken to market. And maybe she's also going to tell us a little bit about her concept of industry commons later on. I'm very happy that she made it from Umeå in Sweden all the way to Berlin here. Welcome, Michela. I'm going to move all the way over to the left-hand side. We have Markus Schwarzer. He's an entrepreneur at the intersection of tech and music. His experience is primarily based on his work for several startups in the field of music, tech and innovation management. He holds a master's degree in music and creative industries from the Publica Baden-Württemberg, which is also where we know each other from. Markus is, importantly, also co-founder of a startup called GrooveCat, where his activities range from business modeling to social media analysis using a design thinking mindset. So, Markus, it's great to have you. Welcome to the panel.
Thank you.
And finally, joining us on stage is Professor Dr. Ellen Euler. It's all right. She holds a professorship for open access and open data at the Faculty of Information Sciences at the University of Applied Sciences in Potsdam since last year. Before that, she worked in the management department of the German Digital Library. And her research primarily focuses on free access to knowledge and culture via the internet as a basis for digital transformative cultural practices. It's a pleasure to have you, Ellen, and welcome, everyone. Thanks. Have you picked up the headphones? Yeah, wonderful. Okay. So as you can see, we have different experts from different fields here. We have a startup that's working at the intersection of music, technology, as well as place. We have an expert for open access and open data, and also concerning the legal aspects of that. We have an expert when it comes to interdisciplinary work and innovation across the different fields, as well as an expert of the relation between music and the city and how those two spheres relate. First of all, I mean, this panel here, what we're going to be dealing with primarily is to try to combine the concept of the smart city with the concept of the music city. Both concepts are fairly well established, but there are hardly any conceptual or strategic intersections between those two. So I see this discussion as a starting point to engage in a discussion that should be, of course, continued further on between of how we can meaningfully combine the smart city aspects with the music city concepts. As you all know, the smart city is an integrated approach to make cities more sustainable, economically more viable, greener, of course, also, but also more socially inclusive. I'm not sure if everyone is so familiar with the concept of the music city, however. And I would, in order to start the discussion, I would like to ask Katja if she could elaborate a little bit about the concept of music cities and why it does make sense for cities to invest in music as an important strategic tool for urban development.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, basically the idea of music cities, there's not a real definition. There's not like anything scientific written down that says like, okay, this exactly is a music city. Obviously a lot of people research on this topic. So at Sound Diplomacy, how we see music cities is it's basically ecosystem in cities that relates to music. That means there's music education, there's music industry, people living in a city listening to music. So everything that's connected to music, music clubs, nightlife, entertainment, but also bars where music is played. So basically music is in a city is everywhere, and it's often not seen as this, that it kind of connects with our life so often. Also when you think of even hospitals or shopping centers, usually there's music everywhere, but it's often not seen as it. And when we talk to cities, cities usually have strategies for everything. They have like a transport strategy, they have often starting now to have a tech strategy, but hardly anyone has a music strategy. So when we approach cities, we really try to explain, first of all, where music plays a role, and then second of all, what the benefits are that music gives to a place. Obviously, there's the economic impact that music has, first of all, from the music industry that is in a place like labels, booking agents, bands living in the city. But there's much more to that. So when you think of music tourism, why do people come to a place like Berlin? It's often because they want to go to clubs and just access the nightlife. And so we start to explain that, like, what is actually music bringing to a place in terms of economic impact. Then the second one is the social inclusion that music brings to a place. There are tons of projects all over the world where music interacts with neighborhoods, where you bring like young kids together or different people together. Music is a great tool in general for community building and bringing people together that usually probably wouldn't speak to each other. Music is an amazing tool for that. And then there's obviously the cultural value that music brings, like musicians living in a place, performing, having shows, bands at night, this kind of part as well. And if you combine this all together, it just has such a huge impact on a place. Music makes, when there is a good music scene and a lively city, it just is so much more important for people to be in that place and to stay in that place, and also obviously to come and visit. So it gives, it just gives huge benefits to cities.
I was wondering, since music is completely digital these days, do music cities have an advantage in forwarding or working on smart cities, or are music cities already in some ways smart cities?
I'd say yes. I wouldn't directly connect it to the digitization of music. It's more because when you think of where music can play a role in a city, that's that you can connect it really easily with smart cities concepts. There is this project in Austin, for example, where they have sound sensors all over the city, and then they sensor like, okay, there is a big music club and it's loud outside, and they can easily send, for example, the not even the police, but maybe neighborhood departments or people that are the music officers of a city, and they can kind of try to level the problems down that music also brings to a place. So this is kind of the positive and negative impact that music has, but there are obviously a lot of concepts that are used in terms of data and music, how you can make the city more livable for everyone, because it's music obviously has an impact on neighborhoods as well. It's loud, it's noisy, it's often seen as a difficult scene to have in your neighborhood, but there are so many solutions with data that it can be made smarter through that. But also on the other hand, that music has an impact on how you can organize transport, for example, or have music in public spaces, and just create better experiences for people living there.
And in how far do you think that other sectors can learn from the music industry, as being one of the first sectors that have been completely digitalized? Do you think it can be a benefit also to a city in terms of learnings from the music industry, and that we can incorporate in urban development, but also in the technologies and also other creative industries or other sectors completely?
Yeah, definitely. I guess it's already been seen like that, because so many other like the book market or film market, they had kind of to adapt later than the music industry. But it's a good learning, all the streaming that's been used, and that it doesn't mean that an industry is dead because of digitization. It can also grow in a different way. And I think music is an amazing example for that, and also how consumers interact with that nowadays. So yeah, for sure.
Thank you, Katja. Michela, you founded Music Tech Fest about 6 years ago now. Please tell us a little bit about why you came up with the concept and how some of the projects that you realized within Music Tech related to the city, and what impact perhaps they had on the different cities that you organized Music Tech Fest in.
Well, I started with the idea that we needed to bring lots of different people together in the same room, because I realized working across all those different areas, like working in the Royal College of Art or Goldsmiths in London, or working with the music industry. I was working with Peter Gabriel at the time, and with iTunes and people like that. And I realized that there were so many incredible things going on both sides, or on all sides, like in the artistic realm with musicians, but also with technology that was being developed in the area of, what most people would just find like music information retrieval. Okay, some people here in the room might know what that is, but a lot of people didn't. And it was phenomenal, the stuff that was happening. So we needed to somehow bring everybody together. And of course, you start with the city and its ecosystem, and you pull all the threads of the ecosystem. So of course it was London. I was based in London, and I knew all these people in London, and I was able to, this is the wonderful thing about city being an ecosystem of different knowledge areas and different specialisms, that if you have a positive approach to this, not to segregate them, but actually to pull it together, you actually get this fantastic, bit like Republica, pool of knowledge in one place. And new things happen out of that. Now, music, we call it a social glue, because music is phenomenal for this, right? If you say if I go to a hardcore scientist and I say to them, come to a creative event, and they go, I'm not sure that that's kind of my thing. I'm a proper rigorous scientist type, and I don't think I would feel awkward. And you say, well, come to a music event, and we'll mess with some kind of new kinds of tools, and they go, yeah, I'm into music. Like, I either listen to music or I play it turns out they all play an instrument. Turns out they love that kind of environment. So it's a fantastic social glue. And once you've brought people together, right from the beginning, we said, okay, we're interacting in the physical space. We're not going to write code for the screen. We're not going to write little apps that isolate everybody in front of their screen. What we want is to create new kinds of instruments, new kinds of modes of interaction and communication. But communication actually is not something we emphasize, but it came as a byproduct. If you actually get people to interact over building new, hack into kind of objects, like some hacked into a ping pong table, for instance, and sonified it so that if you played badly, it went like the music kind of went funny. And so basically all these people ended up gathering around the ping pong table. And because it was a musical instrument, people from completely different backgrounds start to play with each other, interact with each other, become kind of connected through an experience. And then everybody ends up on stage. This is the other thing. And so the communication thing happened very much as a byproduct of interacting with music. We broke down the barriers that jargon or a different kind of class or social divide, class in Britain, sorry guys, but in Britain, you have class divides still. Wouldn't believe it, but you do. And basically you break all those down because they come in, and rather than exchanging a business card, they actually connect through an experience. They build something together, they perform together, they learn to express themselves together, and all of a sudden they're like best mates on Facebook. So, it's a fantastic way to galvanize first the communities within a city that come from different quarters, and then to connect cities between each other as well. Because as we started to tour with the Music Tech Fest, we were invited by different cities to bring it in. And so we ended up doing Wellington in New Zealand. I have some fantastic images of Maori musicians dressed in just a kind of like a little grass skirt with a huge carved instrument. And then a guy with I think it was a Native Instruments gadget, and the two of them were playing together, and the Maori guys wanted to have their instruments hacked with electronics, and it's just fantastic, like the stuff that comes, the enthusiasm of bringing these worlds together. And you can certainly do that in, a city is a wonderful effectively container for this kind of thing.
So there's sort of an implicit effect on the ecosystem of each city that you're doing Music Tech Fest in. I was wondering if you could elaborate on a couple examples from innovations that had a more or less direct impact on the city that came out of Music Tech.
Yeah, we had some insane experiences. Umeå city, reason I'm in Umeå, our business is in Stockholm now, but Umeå, that's another case in point, because actually you've probably seen that ABBA are regrouping and sending avatars around, right? You've seen that, right? So we are actually in the building owned by Björn Ulvaeus. So you can see that, ABBA goes tech. So everything's going in that direction. But we were invited first to Umeå. Umeå is 1 hour north, that's flying time from Stockholm. It's a university city. It's a little bit like Cambridge MA in feel. And it was City of Culture that year. And one of the creative directors of the City of Culture had been to Music Tech Fest in London and said, we need to bring these guys here. So we arrived there. It was fantastic, small, 100,000 people city, university-led, so lots of intelligence, lots of international crowd, a fantastic sort of medley. And, big industry, startups, like bits of everything. It was really great. And that we have such great cities in Europe like this that are that kind of size, between 100 and 500,000. That have these kinds of wonderful capabilities. And we seeded some ideas, or our community seeded some ideas there. One of the ideas that started as a music playlisting system that was using gesture and other parts of the sort of human body rather than the usual kind of like interaction with hands and keyboards. Basically, at first got the interest from the gaming community in the city, but then we realized that the same system was very, very appropriate as a communication system for the forestry industry, would you believe it? And so they have Komatsu there, which is the second biggest manufacturing plant for heavy vehicles for forestry. Went there, basically brainstormed with the head of product, and they got totally into it, and they went, this is amazing, this is like an iPhone for us. And then the biggest investor in the region said, right, if Komatsu is going to buy this, we all invest. So basically suddenly you have something that started as playing with music and playlists and stuff that gets ported into a primary industry as an application, and it gets invested in by the biggest investor in, and he puts a city on the map. So this is just one example. I mean, we have lots, but we get surprised all the time as to how portable some of the stuff that comes out of our ecosystem.
How do you ensure that it's sustainable, what you come up with during Music Tech Fest? Is there a way to sort of trace where the things are going and how they progress and what's being done with it?
Yeah, we've been working 24/7. I haven't had a holiday in 6 years, so that's how. And constantly raising funding and not just public but private funding as well. We've been supporting by over 100 companies, but we have been building structure into it the entire time, looking at what the community needs, giving them talks. So I thought, okay, these guys are doing amazing stuff and there's some great ideas. If we give them exclusive tools, access to exclusive data sets, for instance, or rather, I mean exclusive only in the sense that we've negotiated them with companies and said, right, why don't we pull all this data from all these different people? And it turns out, Philips turns up and they say, do you want our Hue lighting stuff? And then, you get all these different kind of sectors that come into this place and say, why don't you combine all this stuff and see what the guys can come up with? Then we need a structure that safeguards their IP and that safeguards our community's IP, so intellectual property. And I have, notoriously fought lawyers in America when we were in Boston, saying, no, our innovators get to keep their IP. What they generate is theirs. And we have created structures that support this, and then also work with local incubators to make sure that all the ideas that are seeded is not just one of those things where you just do a hackathon, someone invents something cool, they present it, and then basically they go and have a beer. Instead, you actually say, right, the best ideas will get incubated in the local incubators. This is what happened to the forestry one as well. And so basically the local ecosystem gets engaged, the local incubators get engaged, the local businesses get engaged, and then you take it to the next stage, where the next festival you showcase where they got to. And also you make sure that this communication thing just keeps flowing. So many things we have built, and this is where we've ended up doing the Music Bricks pilot when we tested that system, and also when we realized that all of industry were interested in coming into the space of music tech and actually interacting with us, we scaled it to something called Industry Commons. So this basically a proper open innovation. I mean, it's amazing that, the music tech has allowed us to create a proper open innovation ecosystem for all industry around it.
Open innovation is, I think, a proper starting point to involve Ellen in the conversation as well. Since you're dealing with open access and open data, I think one of the key questions, of course, here, and I think you might perhaps disagree with a couple of things that Michela said. I was wondering, how do we make culture in general more accessible for people, not only in the city but in general, of course, and how can we ensure that the culture in general has a greater presence for everyone in cities, everywhere?
Okay, first of all, thanks for having me. First, I felt a little bit like Michela described. I thought, so music, so what do you invite me for this panel? What is it? I'm neither an expert in music nor in smart cities, but then I realized, okay, it deals a lot with my research topics, and there are a lot of parallels. And if you think about open and smart cities, you have to think about open data and how you make data accessible, and all those stuff, those open or smart city initiatives build on open data. And of course, there are some standards, and you have to have an interface, first of all, and the data, so it's music or all kind of cultural data, or all kind of data. So I'm First of all, I'm dealing with research data, but also for other kinds of data, it's important that this data is findable, first of all, that it's accessible, it has to be interoperable, and it has to be reusable. So this is called the FAIR principle for data, and it's designed by the European Commission for Research Data, but it's also applicable for music data as well. So does this answer your question?
Yeah. I was wondering, do you feel like cities are collecting enough data these days? I mean, it seems like, especially with music, the companies own the data, but it's not a common good, of course, because it's commercially used. Should cities start engaging in collecting relevant data more thoroughly than they currently are? Would that be of benefit, do you think?
This is an interesting question, because I'm dealing the narrative in the research topics I'm doing is a little bit, it's another narrative. It's about, so we create public information, it's built on public funds, it's financed by public funds, and then all this information has to be freely available, it has to be accessible, it has to be reusable. And this kind of data we are talking about today, music data, is private data. And if you ask me if the cities should collect also more data, this concerns a lot of privacy aspects. So yeah, I think a smart city is much about how to solve societal problems, and there is a need of data. And I think, yes, some kind of data should be collected and made available. If not, the commercial and the large companies, they collect this data, they have it, and they also decide how to use it. And this is a problem, because we do need this data, access to this data, to analyze it and to solve the problem as well. So it is a question: how can we make accessible the private data for the Commonwealth use?
We previously briefly talked about the very fractured landscape, the legal landscape in Germany, at least, when it comes to privacy, etc., and copyright as well. I was wondering if you could give us a brief insight into the fractured structures of the legal frameworks. I mean, there are new initiatives by the EU. I don't think we have to go into great detail, but just to see how complex the picture really is in order to provide access to data, especially in Germany. It could be useful if you also tell us, perhaps from your perspective, coming from the library and museum side of things, is Google Arts basically the Spotify of art?
If Google Arts is the Spotify?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. But first of all, the legal fragmentation, or the legal framework, which is very fragmented here in Germany, this is a problem, I think, because you have at least 3 federal laws, which all gains the same, or with all try to make accessible data or reusable data. This is, for example, the Information Reuse Act, but they are all incapable to reach this goal because it's so fragmented, and we have one law that is about the reuse of information but doesn't regulate how to get the information. We have a law which regulates how to access information, but it's not about how to reuse information. And we have a law which is about the availability of information, but it's only about the availability of direct public authorities. And so in other countries it's a little bit different. So in France, for example, we have the one solution fits it all. We have a digitization law, and I think here we should think about more a solution that is more easy to get the information that solves this problem.
So there should be one centralized, probably federal solution.
Yeah, and if you speak about is Google Google Arts like Spotify for music, Google for arts, yeah, there are some parallels because Google monopolizes information, and as I just told you that the problem is that we don't have access to this information, to this data, and Google can gains a lot of information and can make big data analysis with this big data it has, but it has to be. We have to create more public spaces so that we have a big pool of open data, and everyone needs to be able to use this data. And
thank you, Ellen. Markus, since you're now running a company called GrooveCat that, of course, also handles data quite a bit. First of all, I was wondering, please explain the concept of GrooveCat and your business model briefly, so that everyone understands what you're doing, and then I have plenty of other questions for you.
Okay, looking forward. Yeah, I'm gonna quickly run you guys through what we actually do. We're GrooveCat. It is an app for capturing and sharing your music moments. So the feeling you get when the music you're listening to fits perfectly to the situation you're in. It could be almost anywhere. I'm pretty sure that loads of you guys know what I'm talking about. You're just out on your bike and you're listening to the song that you've been like going crazy on for the last week, and this just enhances the situation and makes it to so much more. With our app, you can just quickly take out your smartphone, do a quick video, and the technology will detect if there's music running on your device, or is the music coming from the environment. It has a so-called Shazam integration. And then it will search the song in Spotify and add the original sound to the video. And you can also quickly add the emotion that you're feeling right now in that moment and share this on the app. Or yeah, we're in beta right now. It's not possible right now, but quickly or soon you will be able to share all this content from GrooveCat and all your other social media channels. And what it initially does and what it helps us is understand which music in which situation makes people feel in a certain way, and also like triggers actions. And I would say these are the 3 or 4 data points that we actually connect. It's the music, the situation, which has a big impact on music consumption and music, how you perceive music, and the emotion that it evokes. And of course, the location where you took the music moment in.
So I guess you're working with ads. Where's your revenue coming from?
The revenue...
Or will be coming from.
The business model question. Yeah, like this data, like in connection with learning algorithms, can actually benefit for businesses of all kinds. So let's say you're business XYZ and you want to produce an ad, and you don't have the right music for it. You hire music supervisors that will do the job for you. That's vastly costly. It takes ages, and it's coming down to subjective decisions at the end, because it's like just a couple of people making this decision based on their experience. So they're like, look in the past, what worked in the past, and that's a big problem for businesses. And that also excludes a lot of businesses because it's too risky and it's too costly for them. We solve this problem with our data because we. Yeah, how I explained before, we can see which emotion is evoked in a specific target group by song in the combination with situation.
I mean, I would imagine a lot of the pictures are taken in cities as well. So there's you can trace a direct relation between a certain place in the city and the music and the emotion that connects the two. I would imagine that a city has some interest in this connection, and also an interest in the data related to that. Could you imagine having a city as a partner, as opposed to, I don't know, an ad agency, for instance?
A city is about. I would say that our data is mostly interesting for big music events or like any kinds of musical events. And that depends, like if the city is actually the organizer of program or like of a musical event, then definitely working with cities would enhance the experience of people, enhance the social experience and the connection between people. Because like if you take music moments with the Shazam integration at a specific point in the city, you also know all the other people around you who were activated by this song, and you can gather like loads of data from that, ranging from infrastructure to like future events and the programming of future events. Like, so definitely. Yeah.
But I think to me it's also a place-making tool. I mean, you connect a certain place with music, and it's you know, the emotion is right at the center of this. So you form a kind of identity between place and music through your app, basically. So I think cities should be highly interested in what you're doing, and I think, you know, not only the film, the music, as well as the ad industry should be interested. But I think it might be very interesting for cities as well. Katja, you briefly told me that you're currently working on a tool to measure music cities and the impact that music has on cities. Mm-hmm. You don't have to go into the details, but maybe let us know a little bit about the frameworks that you're working with and what your goals are there.
Yeah, just to add something, I think it's a great tool for cities. You could also, on the marketing perspective, I mean, if you create a guide what people listen to at a specific place, that can be super interesting in terms of tourism and guiding people through a city. So look into that. Yeah. So our tool, we're in super beta phase, so I can't say that much about it. So at the moment we're kind of developing a tool with mostly open data that's accessible through open APIs, and we want to find out like what is the value of music in a place. So basically we have around 50 data points that we're collecting at the moment from music schools, music teachers, to clubs, bars, nightclubs, listeners, ticketing in a place. And then we're the goal is to collect that data and to, on the one side, give the cities an idea what's happening in their city. So having a map where it says like, okay, this is all what music means to you, or is happening in your city with music, but also what it means for your city. And then on the second hand, also to compare cities with that. So how much value is music worth in a place like Vancouver, and how much is it worth in Montreal? And the idea is also to create an economic tool out of it that you can like give like the idea of how much the really music is worth in a place.
I think when we talk about smart music cities, even more so than music cities, we have to talk about breaking down silos also in the city administration. I think this is absolutely key. It's a question for everyone here. I was wondering, how can the city become more of a facilitator in order to break down silos and tackle the important questions that we have to deal with at the intersection of smart and music? And I think getting people from different aspects and different fields and different disciplines together seems to be absolutely paramount. But as we all know, cities, being oftentimes highly bureaucratic, have severe difficulty establishing that and being the facilitator for a process that is so desperately needed. What can be done? What are some of the things that...
Yeah, actually, perfect cue for me, because I was thinking about that exactly as you were saying. Smart city, well, data-enabled city is a given. That's like, let's just park that. That's happening anyway, right? So actually, it's almost kind of not worth kind of elaborating too much about how data-enabled it is, because it is. And when I advise to the G7 and they say, oh, how can governments interact with AI? Through AI with their citizens and artificial intelligence, and they all imagine these kind of website portals, and they're going to program AI to detect data patterns and stuff. And I say, no. Your data-enabled public buildings and your bicycle sharing schemes and all of those data-enabled things in your city are the interface between you and your citizen, and therefore you should actively engage in that discourse. So the data-enabled city, I think, is definitely there. I think the smart city is a city that knows how to balance its ecosystem and make best use of its assets. And I think I mentioned earlier, the vast majority of European cities are actually between 100 and 500,000 people. And that seems, those cities have a really good balance. I mean, when you look at what they're made of cultural, very heavy cultural components. We're really good in Europe at that, as making sure that all those have centers of culture. They have museums, they have theaters, they have all those kinds of, and then they don't just have diners like some cities in America. Sorry, I'm not being very deprecating, but that's true. We have cafe culture in Europe. We really should cultivate it. But then we have all these other elements that cities are really working hard at, like creating the startup ecosystem, creating kind of all these things that drive the new economies, and then also usually they are either surrounded by industry or have industry, like big industry as part of it, and they have big traditions. And you're quite right. The only thing that really is a roadblock currently in lots of those are the kind of layers of administration and the really rigid structures that were driven by the previous kind of, the systems that have been running up till now. And it's really funny because, Germany, being such an amazingly advanced nation in the world sphere, actually is hindered by the fact that it's so well developed, and it has been developing for so long that all the structures are so rigidly embedded in the fabric that you now can't break them down. We go to Brazil and we introduce one smartboard per child as a new way to teach children digital literacy through music tech, because kids will interact with music, they will make new musical instruments, they get a fast feedback loop from music, so they learn super quickly, they have fun, and they will engage with digital tools as a new form of literacy. Bearing in mind that in Brazil, 10% of kids are there's a 10% illiteracy in Brazil. That's massive. So basically you can go in from a different angle, and because the structure is not as evolved as it is in Germany, for instance, in education terms, you can leapfrog ahead and you can go into this new thing. And here we have a problem, for instance, in going into schools in Germany, because it is so well organized, so well structured, but it's structured for an era that was based on the printing press, which was an amazing technological invention, and it enabled so many wonderful things. But it has created jargon. We evolved languages out of it. We evolved ways of communication that are based on around this tool that are phenomenal, but we have other ones now. So somehow we need to integrate them, or somehow we need to bridge between the two. And, as you say, in the city, if the cities realize or are more informed about where we are now, the more they are data enabled, the more they start to use the data enabled public buildings, for instance, as a tool for interaction, the more they realize there are new ways in which we can evolve things. It's a bit more of a challenge, I say, where you have those rigid structures.
Would you say the city is more sort of like the interface, or providing the space for the interaction, rather than being the initiator of the process? Maybe it's more productive to have someone from the outside do the initiative and bring in the expertise, and not have the cities do that? I mean, that's a question for everyone as well. But Michela, I think
sorry. I think it's good. I think it's a useful thing for administration to think of their city as a tool for interaction, or as an interface. I think it's a useful thing to do. I'm not saying the city is or isn't. To me, a city is an ecosystem. If it's a well-balanced ecosystem, it's a good, productive city. That's what I would say. I think what lots of cities are realizing, including Mannheim. In fact, Mannheim was one of our main inspirations, but actually we realized we were approached at Music Tech Fest by a whole bunch of different cities in Europe, particularly, that said, we would like to be a music tech city because we see music as a fantastic cultural attractor, but obviously technology combined with music as a way to digitize the city and engage people in this way. And they came into it from different perspectives, and we realized that there is a potential to launch an award for a music tech city. So we're going to do an inaugural award at our first big Stockholm event this first week in September, and invite cities to apply for it. And this is not about cities that have achieved a level of, I don't know, excellence in music tech. Far from it. It's actually cities that have the intention to develop in this way, because we think that that's incredibly useful and very productive for the population. So this is what we've decided to do in response to the landscape that's been evolving.
Okay, awesome. Ellen, you wanted to add something?
I think Michela captured it very well. I want to add something. So I think it's right that culture is key for cultural cohesion, for cultural continuation, for innovation. It's the you call it the social glue, and we have to ensure that we have a big pool of cultural data available, accessible, and reusable. But it's not only about cultural heritage institutions or about the public institutions or research institution to open up and make available their data. It's also about to empower, on the other side, the city, the smart city, to use the private data and to have it and use it to create solutions for our social problems. And this is, we do discuss a lot about how to open up museums, archives, libraries, and so on, and how to make available this public information, but which is not in our focus is how to make available this private data. And we have now a revision of the Public Sector Information Directive, and it seems to come that in the nearer future it will apply also on the private data, and hopefully then we have an opportunity to use also this kind of data for cultural continuation.
Okay, time is running out, but I want to open up the floor for a couple of questions from the audience. I'm sure there are questions for either Katja, Michela, Ellen, or Markus.
Yeah, hello, my name is Holger Schwetter. I think this is a really fascinating panel, and I work on two of the fields. I have to think about which one I pick out now. Maybe I pick out your thing first, because I'm a musicologist. I work on music listening situation, because that's the core of music, and rather than constructing a musical piece as an absolute entity outside of time and space, I think it's more useful to go into the situation and see what people do with music, and then from there research what the music does. So I would be very interested in the data you gather. But at the same point I think, it's private data. Can I afford that as a scientist? You know, so again, how to bridge this interest that you have of monetizing such data. On the other hand, how can you supply science or cities with some access that is, I don't know, that refers to your interest, but at the same time is also somehow publicly justified or cheap. I don't know how to put it.
First of all, thanks for the question. Very good question, by the way. Our data is accessible to anyone who uses GrooveCat. Like, you can also, like, on our search screen, you can search for emotions, and then it will give you recommendations depending on which location you are and how the weather is, for example. So the data is available for everyone. What we will monetize is how we cluster the data, and which vast amount of data will be clustered and actually displayed to the customer. So if you're interested in any kind of, like, okay, we have this particular song here, and I want to know the emotional reaction of people on it, you can just go on the app and, like, search for it. So and, like, grasp your experiences from there. So.
Hello, my name's Olaf. I would like to know how you deal with the legal situation. I listened to Rihanna take a picture, or to Pink, and I put it on YouTube or Facebook, I don't have the rights for the song, and I guess you don't have them either. So I don't get it how you deal with this situation.
Actually, we do not host any kind of copyrighted content. The copyrighted content, in this case, the music, is coming from your own Spotify account. So you do need a premium account from any streaming service to experience the music moments somebody else is uploading. There is a way of using it without a premium account, because the preview will be playing in the music moment from Spotify when you consume it. So this is how we circumvent the legal issues.
Matthias, there was a funny moment that I can add to that.
Sure.
In 2009, that was before I founded the Music Tech Fest, did this, where we created an environment at SIGGRAPH in New Orleans that was basically based on the idea that each person in the city carries a playlist with them. And you know, when you walk around the city and you look at someone might look really interesting, you come closer and you listen to their headphones and they're listening to something really rubbish, and you go, you listen to that, you know, and it's basically you form an opinion on the people around you based on both the appearance and kind of their musical taste. And so we created this environment where you could walk, each person was a playlist, and you could hear in binaural audio all the other people who were walking around. And you could basically walk towards someone if they were listening to something interesting, and you could even like eliminate those that were rubbish. And it was kind of used as a way of social interaction. But in those days, we didn't have Spotify. So, for instance, you plug now into Spotify, and you can actually roll this idea out into the city exactly with your system.
Actually, our initial idea, what you explained right now, it was the initial idea. That's where we started from in 2016, like making visible what people are listening to. So that's quite a funny coincidence.
It has so many ramifications. You can really engage groups and crowds and cliques in the city and see how the social interaction flows. And this kind of data clusters are super interesting, especially like you said, they can be interesting to researchers, they can be interesting to brands, because obviously they never understand who is an influencer in real space, you know, of a particular taste or cultural trends.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I was saying I think cities should be interested in what you're doing, and not only cities. I think we have time for one final question, if there's one. Any questions? No. Then I think I would close. Thank you very much, Markus and Michela, Katja, for being here, for engaging in the discussion. I think this was only a starting point. I think we'll have to continue the discussion for quite a bit of time in order to meaningfully connect the smart city with the music city. But I'm glad that we got together here and made the start of the discussion, and hopefully we'll continue it at different events throughout the world. Thank you for Republica for hosting us, and enjoy the next 2 days at Republica. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.